Once again, ladies and gentlemen, these are notes 2.8. You're actually jotting these down in your notebook. If you don't have enough time right now to jot it down, get on the video, hit pause, and jot it down later, especially if you need help. So the very first step is to identify m and b. Of course, that means that you got to write your equation in y equals mx plus b form. And once it's in y equals mx plus b form, you'll be able to see the y-intercept, that's where it crosses the y-axis, and how much you rise and run according to your slope. That's what it says here. Plot b and then rise and run, but decide if the line is solid or dotted according to your inequality. So for example, if you have something like y is greater than 1/2 x plus 2, that's going to be a dotted line. Why is that? Because there is no solid line underneath the inequality. But if you had something like y is greater than or equal to x minus 5, well, that would be a solid line. Why is that? Because it has a solid line underneath it. Does that make sense? Ring bells from Algebra 1? I hope so. And then after you draw your line, whether it's solid or dotted, depending on your inequality, after that you need to shade the side that represents your answers. You see, your answers are either going to be on one side of the line or the other side of the line. Okay? And how do you know what side to shade? Well, you have to test a point that's not on the line, that's not on your graph. And most of the time you can use 0, 0. Okay? 0, 0 is the easiest. And let's go give you a couple of minutes here. I'm going to pause it, and then we're going to jump straight into the work. So if you didn't have enough time, please get on the video, hit pause, copy the rest down. We will be turning in notebooks this Friday. So anyways, let's move these notes to the side, and let's jump straight into the worksheet. So numbers 1 and 2 are so easy that we'll go back to them later. Let's go with number 3. Everybody go to number 3 on your worksheet. Well, is that in slope-intercept form? No. So we need to move things around. I'm going to subtract x to get y by itself. It'll now read y is less than or equal to negative x minus 4. And that's in y equals mx plus b, except it's not an equal sign, it's an inequality. But now I know that it crosses my y-axis where? Negative 4. So let's all go to negative 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 4 on the y. Of course, that's the b value. The y-intercept. And from that point, I need to rise and run according to my slope. So what's my slope? Negative 1. And you want it in the form of a fraction, so put it over 1. So it's negative 1 over 1. So you will be going either up or down. What do you guys say? Down 1 to the right 1. You always run to the right. The positive or negative just tells you if it's going up or down, but you always run to the right. So it's negative 1 over 1. So always run to the right. And normally I would draw my line right here. But I need to decide, is this line going to be solid or dotted? Solid, because it has a solid line underneath the inequality. So how about this? This line is way too small if I do a solid line like that. So let's use that same slope pattern to extend it all the way through. Okay, now we already know it's going to be solid. But either way, let's extend it all the way through. Down 1 over 1. Let's go backwards. Over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1. That way it'll extend all the way to the other side of the graph. And we did say that because this was a solid line underneath the inequality, it will be a solid line all the way through. So let's do that. Solid line all the way through. So if you have that part on the test Friday, you get half credit, because you still need to show where your answers are at. Your answers are either going to be on one side of it or the other side of it. Now, how do we check where the answers are at? Pick a point and test it. Look, watch. Here's a red dot. Tell me when to stop. Anybody? Stop? Okay, I'm stopping right here. What is, now this is just for funsies here, so you could get a true understanding, all right? What's that coordinate? 2, negative 1, correct? So if I wanted to test this point, all I need to do is take my x value of 2 and my y value of 1, and I could either plug it into this modified one or to the original one. Either one is fine because it's really the same inequality that we started with. So if I take 2 and plug it in right here in the original, 2 plus, take y, which is negative 1. 2 plus negative 1, what's that? 1. That's 1. 2 plus negative 1 is 1. Now let me ask you this. Is 1 less than or equal to negative 4? No, 1 is greater than any negative number. So 1 is not less than or equal to negative 4. So that's false. This point does not work. So this, it does not work. No. No worky. Okay? So if that point doesn't work, that means it's not an answer. Where are my answers at? They must be on the other side of the line, right? So down here, any point down here is going to work. Look, if I just, let me pick this guy right here. That coordinate right there is a coordinate -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -5, -1. If I plug in a -5 and a -1, it's going to work. I already know that, right? If I plug in -5 for x, it's -5, plus -1, that's -6. -6 is definitely less than -4. So yes, it works. All of these are going to work. None of these are going to work. And when we graph, you want to represent all of your answers. So of course, I'm going to be shading in everything that's on this side of the red line. Okay? So as you saw in this example, I tested different coordinates. What coordinate do you believe is the easiest one to test? 0, 0. It was on step 3 of our notes, right? If you test the point 0, 0, how easy is that? You could go to the original and instead of x, think 0. Instead of y, think 0. So you got 0 plus 0, that's 0, is less than -4. Is 0 less than -4? No, 0 is greater than any negative number, right? Okay, so 0 is greater than any negative number. So this one did not work. That means that it's not an answer. That means that my answers are on the other side. So 0, 0 is the quickest, easiest point to use. Unless your line actually goes through 0, 0, then you don't want to use 0, 0. Okay? What just happened? Sorry. Okay, so let's jump to another one. Let's see. How about number 7 looks interesting. Yeah. Let's do it. Number 7. Okay, so what do we need to do first? Yep. Get y by itself by subtracting x first. I'm going to rewrite this thing. It's -3y is less than or equal to. I'm going to write my x value first, the -x. I'm just going to write it. And then that +6, I'm going to put it as a +6. Algebra 1 stuff, right? Final step would be to divide by -3. Divide by -3. Divide by -3. And we are dealing with inequalities. And the only difference between inequalities and equations is that when you divide by a negative on your last step, what do you have to do? You have to change that, bless you. You got to change that inequality symbol, all right? So this guy needs to change to a greater than. So let's rewrite our whole new inequality. You're going to have y is greater than or equal to, and what is a -1 divided by a -3? That's +1 divided by 3, right? +1/3, you still have the x, and the b value is going to be -2. Are you with me? Yes. All right. Now, where does it cross the y-axis? -2. What do I do from that point? How much do I rise and run? 1, 3. So I'm rising 1, running 3. And I'm going to continue to rise 1, run 3. That way I have the whole feel of it. Now the question is, it's going to be solid or dotted? Solid. Okay, so a solid line right through those dots. And now I want to represent my answers. They're either down here or up here. So what is an easy point to test? 0, 0. So when I test 0, 0, 0 for x, 0 for y, you could go with the original up here, x, 0 for x, 0 for y, or you could go to your modified one, 0 for y, 0 for x. Whichever one you want. You can do both if you want. 0 for y, 0 for x, it would say 0 is greater than -2. Is 0 greater than -2? Yes. So this point does work. So what am I shading? The top. If it wouldn't have worked, I would have shaded in the bottom. Easy peasy, right? Now, there is a slight shortcut. You guys want to know the shortcut? If you ever have this situation, you have this line and you want to know what to shade in, the shortcut is, if you think about the terms of y, where's y? It's either above or below. Y runs up and down, right? So if y is greater than, then you're going to shade in above. If it would have been y is less than, you would have shaded in below. But I mean, the true understanding is to test a point, because if it doesn't work, that's not your solution, and the other side would be the solutions. So the true understanding is to test a point and see if it works. If it does work, you shade that in. If it doesn't work, you shade in the other side. But there's this like little shortcut that you could do. It's greater than, so greater than would be above, less than would be below. What do you guys think? Okay, now that's easy, but we're going to use that same concept, idea, with the newer stuff that we learned in Algebra 2, like absolute value functions, absolute value inequalities in this case, or this absolute value inequality, right? So which one do you guys want to do, 8 or 9? 9? Okay, so let's do 9. Do you guys remember how to graph absolute value functions? Yes. If you don't remember, let me refresh your memory. It's y equals, let's put a absolute value of x minus h, put the h in red, and then plus k. It's kind of like the vertex form of parabolas. Your highest or lowest point will be the hk value. You have to think opposite on h, you take k for what it is. And that a value in the front, it does tell you how wide it is or how narrow it is, kind of like parabolas. But you're not going to be using the pattern of a parabola. The pattern of a parabola is 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. But right here, it's just a slope. It's like the slope. That's why I did it in blue, to help you remember that the a value is kind of like the slope. So you rise and run from your hk value according to this a value. So what is my most important point? What is my vertex, like if it were a parabola? What's my highest or lowest point? Okay, -1, -2, perfect. Let's go to -1, let's go to -2, which is down here. I guess you could draw an axis of symmetry like parabolas if you wanted to, but you don't have to. But from this point, how much am I rising, how much am I running? I am rising and running according to this value, which is 3. -3. So I'm going to go down 3 over 1. So everybody go down 3 over 1, put a dot right there. And you could continue to go down 3 over 1 and put a dot right there. And of course, if you did your axis symmetry, you'd reflect it over to the other side. Or you could simply go down 3 over 1 in the opposite direction. It's totally up to you. If you guys want to practice, like if it were a vertex, go ahead and do that axis symmetry. Plot the point over here and over here. Is this V going to be a solid V or a dotted V? Dotted. Okay, so let's put a dashed line right there. Let's put a dashed line right here. And let's test a point to see where our answers are at. They're either going to be on the outside, like remember, if you have a straight line, it's either on one side of the line or the other side of the line. But if you have a V, it's either going to be on the outside of the V or on this like pizza slice inside of the V. Okay, so what point is the easiest to test? 0, 0. And you can test any point you want, but if you want to go for 0, 0 the way we have been, that's great. If you plug in a 0 for x and a 0 for y, it will say 0 is greater than, well, what's 0 plus 1? 1. And what's the absolute value of 1? 1. And what's -3 times that 1? And what is -3 minus 2? -5. So what we really have is 0 is greater than -5, doing the math. Is that a true statement? Yes, it is. So that means that this answer does work. That means that all of the answers on the outside are going to work. That means if you would have tested any coordinate in here, it would not have worked. Okay, so what are we going to shade in? The outside. Shade in the outside. That's disgusting. Whatever. And of course, you could check your answers on the back. So let me tell you this right now, ladies and gentlemen. This is the final section of Chapter 2. I will select 2 of these to be on the test Friday. Oh yeah, numbers 1 and 2, they're so easy that some people get confused. Do you guys remember how to graph y equals a number? A straight line, right? Horizontal, right through the y axis at that value of -3. So if you go to the y axis, and if you go to -3, and if you put a dot right there, the question is, do I draw my horizontal line dotted, or do I do solid? Solid. Okay, so let's do a solid line. And now because it's an inequality, I need to shade either one side of the line or the other side of the line, right? You could test the point 0, 0, which means 0 for x, there is no x. 0 for y, it would say 0 is less than or equal to -3 for 0, 0. Is 0 less than or equal to -3? No. So this blue dot does not work. That means that my answers are below. Or how about the shortcut? What is the inequality that you see right here? It says less than or equal to. Less than is below. Greater than is above. Bless you. How do you graph x equals a number? That kind of reminds me of axis of symmetry, right? X equals a number is you go to the x-axis, it's a vertical line going right through that value. So let's go to the x-axis value of 2. Do I draw a solid vertical line right through it or a dotted vertical line right through it? Dotted. And now I need to shade in either the left side or the right side of that dotted line. What do you guys say? The left side or the right side? The right side, right? X is greater than 2. You could use that shortcut also. Where's greater than on the X is greater than's over here. So you'd shade in this side. Of course, another great idea is to continue with that same practice of testing 0, 0. Plug in 0 for X, 0 for Y. There is no Y. So 0 is greater than 2. Is 0 greater than 2? No. So this one does not work. Did not work. So that means that your answers are on the other side. Okay. So I think I've explained almost all of it. You guys could do the last 4, the remaining 4. The answers are on the back. 2 of these will be on Friday's test.